Hello, I hope you're well. It is Lost Wolf. Um, Today it's pretty cold. It's pretty miserable. Today we're going to be playing some Secret of Monkey Island. As I mentioned yesterday, that's the game that we're going to be picking up now that we've finished Ultima 4. And the reason we're doing all of that is in turn because there are people here, and if I need to drop the game at a moment's notice, this is a game that makes sense to do it with because you can save almost anywhere. So today we're probably not going to play the game. We're going to look at the like a little potted history of adventure games to start off with, just to get us up to speed with where we're at in the timeline for that. And then we're going to look at all the boxes and the things that come with the game. Um, so I think it makes sense to start the history portion of this particular stream. Well, actually, it makes sense for me to do housekeeping first, and then we can actually start the history portion of the stream. Um, so let me get all that done. Okay, so let me do this and this, and then let's get going here. So I think it makes sense to start talking about the potted history of adventure games by talking about where the adventure game originated from and kind of look at the two branches of adventure game that were developing over time, and then to talk about where specifically Monkey Island fits in with all that. Um, so let's, I mean, the best place to start with this sort of potted history is to start by looking at screenshots. So let me bring this up. So I think that the best place to start talking about where adventure games came from is to start talking about the environment that they were bred in. Um, and the initial environment, so the initial environment for these games is that there aren't really graphic cards, and the way that you can structure games in this era is you can either do one of two things. You can either use ASCII characters to denote everything, and there is a branch of games that actually do that in the roguelikes. They're not roguelite yet, but they're roguelike. And the other branch that you can sort of pull from is storytelling, right? And the original game that kind of gets the ball initially rolling for adventure games is just a game called Adventure. Um, there are two folks who pulled up and create initial versions of Adventure. Um, and the person that's most the two people who are most responsible for this are Don Woods and William Carter. And William Carter and Don Woods make a game called Colossal Cave Adventure. And Colossal Cave Adventure is built on a PDP 10. Now, when we talk about computers at this point, they're still um, big and massive, but they're not as big as and massive as they were in the 60s, but they aren't things that you usually use in your household. They're usually things that you use at a dedicated workstation in a university, or if you're very lucky, your business has workstations that, for all intents and purposes, don't have brains. They have a monitor and they have a keyboard, and then the monitor and keyboard often talk to some computer that's far away. And in this environment, then, it makes sense that the games that are going to get developed are slow and sort of plodding, and they don't rely on physicality, right? There's a couple of games that rely on physicality a very little, but they can't do a lot because we're talking about latency, and latency is a huge issue at this point. The PDP-10 version of Colossal Cave Adventure ends up making its way to the IBM PC, and it gets called Advent very often when you see it like that. At the time that Adventure gets rolling, there are people who are playing these games at university, and they're soaking in this atmosphere, right? And we've seen already, because we played them, that the first initial strand of like a true adventure game that lands on the IBM PC is Zork. Now, Zork was initially a mainframe game. And initially, when we think about Zork as it exists on the PC for DOS, it's the actual game ends up being split into 3 parts, Zork 1 and 2 and 3, because the mainframes at the time had a lot more memory than the computers that were in the household had. Like, we're talking a huge amount of difference between the two. Like, some of the very early computers would have like 16K of memory, which isn't really a lot of memory to store anything, or even maybe 32K or 64K if you're very lucky. And then eventually it'd be 128, 256, and so on and so forth. But the mainframes have a lot more memory that they can work with, and so the whole of Zork could comfortably fit onto a mainframe and work quite well. But to get Zork to work on a PC, what they ended up having to do was chop it into 3 sections, right? And the image that you're looking at is what our first true adventure game is, and that is probably just Zork and Adventure. Zork is one strand of adventure game, and in the strand we have people like Infocom, we have Level 9, and we have Legend Entertainment, who are the 3 biggest players in this market, right? Infocom are the obvious leader. Infocom fall from grace as they start meddling with stuff that isn't gaming. So I've mentioned this in the past on a specific stream, that what Infocom wanted to do was they wanted to branch out from being just a video game house. And they started making what amounts to an everything piece of software called Cornerstone. And Cornerstone was like a bit of a boondoggle for them. They just kept digging themselves in and digging themselves in and digging themselves in. And the more they dug themselves in, the more money they had to spend on creating this product that was never ever hitting the market. And this bled them dry in other directions. So, for example, they have hits with Zork 1, 2, and 3, and then their implementers start implementing other games, and these are all seminal, interesting games, but they're not hits on the trajectory that Zork 1, 2, and 3 were on. They sold pretty well, but they never quite made the money that the Zork games made. So, Blabberhoof says, wow, this looks like a very different to The Secret of Monkey Island than all the versions I experienced over the decades. We're talking very quickly. it probably lasts about half an hour, about the history of adventure games before we get to Secret of Monkey Island, because I think it's important to trace the sort of line in the sand that the adventure game goes through to get to the Secret of Monkey Island. Great Bit of Gamers says Zork classics. Yeah, we might eventually play Zork. Zork is very heavy-handed and a bit dense. I want to get back to Infocom at some point, but I haven't had the stamina to sit and play an Infocom game in a while. Blabberhoof says, no worries, thanks for the context, no problem. As I was saying, we have these three main players. We have Infocom, we have Level 9, and we have, who are the other people? It doesn't really matter. The point is that we have Infocom specifically, and Infocom leads the specific text-based charge of the adventure game stream, right? And eventually, for example, we end up, this is where we start with Infocom. We start off with Zork. Blabberhoof says, to be honest, I know about Zork, but I never played it. It was a tad before me time. I was about half a decade later to the computer game market. Yeah, it's, so would I recommend playing Zork now? Yes, but I'd play it with a walkthrough. I think it's an interesting game. I think there's so much in Zork's design that can undercut you as a player if you don't know what's going on, right? So I think that Zork is interesting and worth playing, but I think it's interesting and worth playing as a historical artifact and with a walkthrough. Okay, so this is the beginning of this line. This line terminates with a game that we played on stream called Arthur. This is Arthur the Quest for Excalibur. And you can see over the course of, because we start the decade with Zork, we end the decade with Arthur. By the end of the decade, Infocom are in real trouble, and in order to get somewhere in the market, they have to sell the business to someone else, and they sell to Activision, and it's a whole big debacle. But one of the very last adventure games that they ever published is called Arthur the Quest for Excalibur. Blabberhoof says, I would definitely need a list of commands for the parser. Yes, because that's one of the big problems with the parser-based game. And in fact, we're going to talk about that. One of the side tangents that we're going to talk about in this very potted history is the problem with the parser. So at the end of this decade, Infocom realizes that one of the ways that they need to update their games is to make the games have graphics, and they're moving in this direction, but they can't move fast enough, and so Infocom as an entity die, right? But in this strand, in this one of two strands that we have for adventure games, we have, as Blabberhoof pointed out, the parser. And the parser is very, integral to the strand of adventure games, because the parser is how you drive the narrative and the game forward, right? Some of the folks who are working in this medium made the realization that Blabberhoof made. They said, I would definitely need a list of commands for the parser, and that's actually important, because one of the sets of folks, Level 9, realized that this is actually a problem, that you can't just, especially if people are new to adventure games, you can't just drop them into an adventure game and expect them to be able to cope with the sheer amount of choice that they have, right? There are two problems with this idea. The one problem is there are endless numbers of strings that you can put into the computer that don't make sense. And the other problem is tied to this problem in that the computer, being a computer, doesn't understand natural language. People who are going to come to an Infocom adventure for the first time are going to expect to be able to type natural English, and you can't. There's a very formal sentence structure for adventure games at this point, because the formal structure is just what makes sense for a computer to understand. Like, you would go get object, right? So we're talking very often verb noun. Level 9 intuit this, and in the strand, the text-based strand, they come up with this idea that they can have the verb list on screen all the time, and you can know what you can do because the verb list is sometimes context sensitive. All the stuff on the left here is stuff that you can do. All the stuff on the right, air duct, or bed, blue coverall, is context sensitive to that room. So, for example, you could build a sentence out of this. You could say, open air duct, right? And this makes sense, but it's still not good enough because level 9 die, right? The market is slowly shifting underneath level 9 Infocom and all these text-based houses, and it's giving way to graphical adventures, which start with King's Quest 1. Now you'll notice there's a funny thing happening here. We've got graphics, and the graphics fill the screen now, but we've still got a text parser. In the lower left-hand corner here, we've got a little right angle bracket, and we've got a little line underneath that, and it's waiting for you to type something. And the thing about Sierra's parser, Infocom's parser is very smart for some version of smart that the Sierra parser never is, because the Infocom parser lets you chain things together. You can say get the key and the shovel. You can say talk to the bird and give it the whistle. And the parser will, if it's far enough along in advance, will understand those sentences. Sierra's parser is very dumb. Sierra's parser can only do, like we talked about, a verb, noun, and that's all it can do, right? You get to say take knife or eat bread, and that's it. But now we're living in the world of graphics. Blabbo says, oh, infamous Sierra games. That save button was glowing. Yes. And in fact, we played this on stream probably like a year or two ago now, and we got to the very infamous because Sierra likes mazes, and in this game there is what amounts to a maze where you have to climb the beanstalk, and in that section I was just saving every 2 seconds. Blabberhoof is correct. So we have graphics now, right? And this is the other strand of adventure game that goes up, the graphical strand. And the graphical strand slowly but surely works away at the parser. In the first attempt at working away at the parser, we come up with this design. This is, again, we're talking like about 10 years removed. This is King's Quest V. And in King's Quest V, what we're looking at now is we're looking at icons. You don't type anything anymore. And in fact, the number of choices you have shrinks down a lot as a result, because we have these icons for everything. Now, King's Quest V had narrowed down how many icons it wanted. So, for example, you get a walk and a run button, and you get a look and a do and a talk kind of object. Object in your inventory, save, stop, which is end the game, system settings, question mark, what is all this on my left-hand side? But again, we're very far removed from the Infocom strand of adventure game, because when this menu goes away, this picture is full screen, and it's completely immersive at this point. Blabberhoof says, my first contact with adventure games was with Leisure Suit Larry and the Land of Lounge Lizards. Didn't speak a word of English back then. That game was definitely nothing for me. Dad told me, don't you dare play that. Well, challenge accepted. Yeah, and there's a lot of apocryphal stories like that where people actually picked up English because of things like Leisure Suit Larry, right? So I think that on balance, the parser-based version of adventure games is actually good in some respects, because if you're struggling with English, it's one way to learn English, because you have to put the English into context, right? But it's also not a great way to play games, as we'll keep on seeing, right? So the logical endpoint of having this is actually this. This is King's Quest 7. Played this on stream as well. And you'll notice a very important thing about this game. It has no icons at all, right? You have this little crown over here, and the crown does everything. The crown is your do, your look, your take. It's all those things. And now we are... Okay, so one thing I do have to mention is we've dropped away from things being full screen now, because this interface that's at the bottom is always there, right? But we're now in a world where, look at how long it took us. It took us 12 years to get, or 13 years and change. It took us 12 years to get from a screen with white text on a black background to animated visuals, right? But there has to be a halfway point. And the halfway point for us is the LucasArts games, right? The LucasArts games are on the level 9 line, but the thing about the level 9 games is you always had access to the parser if you wanted it. You could always type in sentences. In LucasArts games, you get the parser, but you don't have to type, right? So when we have, like, over here, walk to, you could walk to the sign and then right click to read it. Or you can hit read and read sign and it would do that for you. So we're building sentences still, but we're building sentences where we know what verb and nouns exist, because we can move the mouse around and it will tell us what the verbs and the nouns are. Or, sorry, it will tell us what the nouns are. And this is kind of where LucasArts come in. And LucasArts is very important because LucasArts make a bunch of important distinctions about the adventure game in general. If we step back even one game in this list, and we go back to King's Quest... Sorry, no, we'd have to go back 2 games because you can't die in this one. If we step back to King's Quest 5, King's Quest 5 and Monkey Island come out within spitting distance of each other. And, sorry, Maniac Mansion and King's Quest 5 come out within spitting distance of each other. And in King's Quest 5, it's still possible to die, because Sierra doesn't like the player very much, and they believe that killing the player is funny, so they do it a lot. In Maniac Mansion, it's possible to die, but you have to work hard to do it. You have to physically be driving yourself into a tree, watching the oncoming tree, and going, hey, I'd like to just plow my car into it. And that brings us to Monkey Island. Now, Monkey Island is a very specific kind of game that grew up with this whole thread running behind it. When Ron Gilbert made this game, he was thinking about Sierra games. He was thinking about Infocom games. He was thinking about the other adventure games that existed at the time. And he decided a couple of very important things that then went on to inform the entirety of adventure games going forward. One of the things that he decides is that, for example, in Monkey Island, you should never have to run out of something, right? If there's a crucial element and you can run out of it, that's bad. Take that sort of thing away from the player. Let me scroll up for a second. Blabberhoof says Maniac Mansion was very important. Introducing the verb action menu, the puzzle dependency. Some puzzles only open up if you solve another one first, so your dead-end possibilities are drastically reduced. And the SCUM system, a kind of middleware for the adventure designs and underlying hardware. Kind of like Java nowadays. Yes, that's actually a perfect way of putting it. Scum's system is very smart because so Sierra has an equivalent system called SCI, and SCI is very much about programming games in an object-oriented way. Scum is sort of very similar to that. But yes, you're on the right track. Ivy Soiji says hello, and they say hi hoof. No spoilers, just when I play the game, we're not there yet. Please don't spoil the game. Everybody Gamer says, my first computer adventure game I played was the Textonia Adventureland by Scott Adams. Yeah, we really should play that because it's a game that actually fits into this history quite well. Ivy Luigi says, I love Monkey Island, so this is your first time playing it. No, I played it when it was current. We're playing it now because I need a game that I can put down in a hurry in case I get called away. And adventure games are perfect for that because you can save any time, more or less. But what we do here with very old games is I like to kind of look at the history of whatever it is that we're looking at, because I think it's important before we sit down and play the games that we at least examine where they came from. So, as Bleiberhoof alluded to, Monkey Island is very well designed. And in fact, the person who developed this game, Ron Gilbert, eventually made what is known as sort of a player's manifesto, and it was written and he put it out, and it's called Why Adventure Games Suck. I'm not going to paraphrase the whole thing, it's not worth doing that, but I want to look at some of the things that he found important and that go into the design of Monkey Island, because we're going to see these things over and over and over again. Okay. So, before we actually play Monkey Island, I want to mention one very important thing. Lucasfilm, because this is who they were at the time, were constantly tinkering with this game for a long time. There's an initial release in 1990, and then there's another release in 1992, and then there's just releases all the way across time and space until we end up with the special edition. And because they were tinkering with it all the time, there's different versions of it that have different display modes. Like this one just prior to what we're looking at here is EGA, right? We have CGA over here, and this is how I encountered Monkey Island. My first foray into Monkey Island was 4-color CGA. I didn't have the luxury of having pink and blue. I had amber because that's all my monitor was capable of. Also, along these lines, I didn't hear the music the way it was intended because I had a PC speaker, and you don't want that in your life. I'm not going to put you through it, but this is how I encountered Monkey Island for the first time in 1990. So I played it before. I don't remember any of it, so pardon me while I make huge Monkey Island errors. But LucasArts were constantly tinkering with this game. For example, in the version that I encountered, there's a joke about this, I think it's 39 or something, that we won't see because they had to keep on tinkering with it and they took that out. Oh, yeah. So the initial Blabberhoop, so the Blabberhoop says OCGA version. The initial version was EGA only, and then they eventually upgraded it to VGA. And the EGA version could display in CGA, and as we'll see in a second, it could also display in Hercules. Blabberhoop says, oh yeah, I recall that vividly, CGA PC speaker. I was so with envy to my buddy who had an awesome Atari. Yeah, the Atari looked very good at that point in time. So here we have Hercules, right? Hercules is just a video adapter that can only do black and white. But the trade-off that you get with the black and white is that very often games would display in CGA or EGA in 320 by 200, where games in Hercules could display in much higher bit depth resolution that we wouldn't actually get back to for another 10 years. So, Secret of Monkey Island all in black and white. Okay. So I brought up Ron Gilbert, and I told you that he wrote this manifesto called Why Adventure Games Suck and What We Can Do About It. I'm looking at that webpage right now. I'm just going to paraphrase pieces of it. But his take on adventure games is that there are problems with the whole design of adventure games. And as developers, the players need more help than what they're currently getting. So one of the things that he says is the end objective needs to be clear. And we'll see this right in the middle of Monkey Island 1's initial opening call. It tells us exactly what we want to do to become a pilot, okay? Because that's our job in this game. The sub goals to get there must be obvious. Live and learn. So, adventure games, the way most adventure games used to work up until Lucasfilm started reinventing the genre, is that you died and learned. This is a very infamous Let's Shoot Larry 2 puzzle that starts right at the like at the very beginning of the game. Blabberhoof, you'll probably know this because you played Let's Shoot Larry. In Let's Shoot Larry, there's a cutscene that happens midway through the game. And the cutscene revolves around, the only way it plays is if you have all the items in your inventory that you need to survive the cutscene. And that's quite far away, like quite far into the game, right? And one of the pieces of equipment that you need to survive is sunburn cream, right? And if you don't pick that up, and it's very easy to miss, if you don't pick that up, you could go halfway through the game, get to the cutscene would play, and you would die. And you wouldn't know where the sun cream is, right? Lucasfilm wanted to make this different. They wanted you to stay alive and to learn from what you were seeing around you, right? Zero would have just killed you. LucasArts and Lucasfilm didn't want to do that. Backwards puzzles are so a backwards puzzle is you find the solution to a problem before you encounter the problem. So you have unnecessary weight in your inventory because you are carrying this thing around and you think, oh, I can use it here, or I can use it here, and I can use it here. But you don't need to use it until you encounter the problem, and that might be far away into the game. He says, I forgot to pick it up. Dead man walking situations where we talked about Larry. Puzzles should advance the story. Not every... So we can take our cues from King's Quest 1 and 2 for this. King's Quest 1 and 2 are treasure hunts. And 90% of the things that you pick up are never used. And a couple of things that you do pick up don't always move the story along, right? Like a famous thing that moved the story along in King's Quest 1 was picking up the bucket of water to throw at the dragon to get it to move away from the area that was in to expose the magic mirror, right? But not every puzzle in King's Quest 1 moved the plot forward. For example, you could get the knife quite early in that game and not necessarily know that the knife was tied to the bucket. Okay? So things like that. Real time is bad drama. I agree with this. So he mentions, and I agree with this, that adventure games shouldn't have timers in them. Because we're going to play a couple of games that mess with this idea a little bit, we're still going to see this as a problem. But it becomes less and less of a problem as adventure games go up and up and up. Right? The most recent game that we played that had a clock in it was King's Quest 4. Incremental reward. So what he's saying here is that as you solve a puzzle, it should incrementally reward you for solving more pieces of that puzzle. And with Monkey Island, the puzzle for this is the sword fighting. Because we'll learn that once we discover sword fighting, it just has reward after reward after reward until you solve the entire puzzle. He's talking here about arbitrary puzzles. Arbitrary puzzles are just puzzles that are in the way to stop the player. They don't move anything forward. Reward intent is to give you something to aim for when you're busy solving a puzzle. Unconnected events, there's a strand of adventure game that doesn't really tie everything together, and so we end up with this problem. And then give the player options, which is to say, if there's King's Quest 1 was so good about this. King's Quest 1 would give you multiple ways through a problem, and then King's Quest 2 started dialing that back, and adventure games learned from King's Quest that you don't give the player options, and so he wants to re-add that into adventure games, and that's kind of what he thinks are the problems with adventure games. So we'll see in Monkey Island that he had designs away a lot of these ideas in favor of the player, and I think that's very good. Okay, so let's. Blabberhoof says, even if Monkey Island tells the player exactly what to do at the beginning, it's almost foolproof. But I've seen enough streamers who are overwhelmed by the puzzles and don't know what to do and give up. So never underestimate the lack of attention of players. Yeah, and in fact, there's another designer in Lucasfilm that recognized this problem in turn, which is Brian Moriarty. And he decided that he wanted to make a game, Loom, that was beatable by anyone who picked it up, right? Because he recognized that the number of options could sometimes be paralyzing, and that you would end up with a situation where you wouldn't quite know where to move next and what to do next. So I agree with that again. All right. So usually when we play a game like this, I like to imagine that we're in our car, we're driving home, we got the box, we're gonna open it up and we're gonna look inside the box, and that's what we're gonna do now. So the first thing that we're gonna look at is the box. Now, before we look at the box, I want to just very quickly look at the EGA version of the back of the EGA version's box. We're going to look at the box properly shortly, but I want to just look at the back of the box for EGA just so that I can show it to you and just sort of mention that. So we played Ultima 1, and Ultima 1 had a lot of different versions of the box because as Ultima 1 grew up and Ultima 0, as Ultima 0 and 1 grew up, the copy on the back of the box changed quite a lot. But the gap between 1990 and 1992's Monkey Island box isn't very big at all. But I want to show off the back of the box because I want to just show you the EGA graphics very quickly that they were super proud of. Where's my cursor? Oh, I am in the wrong program. Because of course I am. Here we go. That's better. So this is the EGA version of the game. It doesn't look like it because this picture is very small, but this is Stan, right? And then we have the dog. But I love, see, so one of the things that we're going to discover about this game is that by contrast with Zero games, Lucasfilm were constantly having fun, and so their sense of humor comes across in almost everything that we encounter in the packaging in the game and so on and so forth. So it says do business with quaint and humble shopkeepers, participate in complex and meaningful dialogues, and of course we got the dog, woof woof arf, visit interesting places and steal stuff. And these are very difficult to see because of course we got pixelation and I can't show them to you properly, but this is a very fancy looking place. This is a street. Experience the never-ending nightlife of Melee Island. Okay, so that's the EGA version of the back of the box, right? So let's actually look at, we're in a car, we're driving home, we've got the box with us. For all intents and purposes, we're going to pretend that we've got the VGA version of the game and that that's the version that we're going to play. And yeah, we have This is the whole of the box here. We're gonna meet all these people. This guy is the guy in the center on the right is the main guy. And then there's other folks here as well. There's an undercurrent of lots of different things happening here that we'll all meet as we play the game. But the important guy here is this person here, right? And we'll talk about who he is and how he got his name probably in about an hour or so after we're done looking at the manual and everything. But this is such a cool evocative box. It captures so neatly the things that are going to be in the game, right? And it's colorful and beautiful. Now, when Ron Gilbert set out to make this game, he'd written Pirates of the Caribbean, and Pirates of the Caribbean kind of lodged in his brain, and this was what he built his game around. So you can see everything on the cover is kind of oversized and almost ride-like, and that's a great texture to go for a eye-catching box, right? Blabberhoof says turn on and turn off as shown in the EGA box were not in the game. Yes, 100% were they. That was from the interface of Maniac Mansion Zach McCracken. They send the action verbs for MM to my knowledge. Yes, that's very true. So, one of the things I keep mentioning is that they kept messing with Maniac Mansion for a long time. And as they messed with Maniac Mansion, they would invariably sort of pare down the number of verbs that they had in the list of verbs that you could use. ATM Machine says no, they were there in the floppy version. Yeah, it's been so long that I don't remember that. The Secret of Monkey Island, a graphic adventure by Ron Gilbert. And this plays on an IBM PC. Notice that we've got XT and AT. That's the fastest you can go at this point. This is 8 megahertz, right? We're not even talking about 286s yet. We're just talking about the bare bones version of the PC as it existed at that point. The PS2 and Tandy. You need 640k of RAM to play it. You want VGA, EGA, CGA, MCGA, Tandy, 16 color. This version, the 1992 version, doesn't have access to Hercules anymore. I think they just stripped out that driver. But, you know, the rest of these are okay. You got joystick and mouse optional. You could play this with a keyboard. It would be painful, but you could. It supports optional AdLib and Sound Blaster cards, and eventually this would support MT32 as well. This is the 3.5 disc enclosed version. Okay, so as I mentioned, Lucasfilm become LucasArts, but at this point, they're still Lucasfilm games. Okay. ATM Machine says the game had 12 verbs in the EGA and VGA floppy versions, but 9 in the CD version. Which version will you be playing? I am playing the disc version, but not the disc version I encountered. I think I'm playing. I'd have to check the dates on it, but I think it's the 1992 version. So okay, that's the front of the box. Then we have the back of the box. The Secret of Monkey Island. And here we have the VGA version of the back of the box. It doesn't look significantly different. I don't know if they might not have changed the screenshots because they were so small. There's a 16 color IBM MCGA. Yeah. They didn't actually change the screenshots between versions of the box. This is 256 colors. There we go. ATM Machine says both EGA and VGA floppy versions came out in 1990. Oh, okay, interesting. I recalled that there was only an EGA version for a long time, and then there was a VGA version. Blabberhoof says, will it be with the stump joke? No, I don't think so. I haven't played that far, so I'm not sure. ATM Machine says the CD version removed the stump joke. Yes, it did. ATM Machine also says those screenshots have a fake GUI, but the real one was very similar. Yeah, because these were probably from tests. The the GUI that I'm conversant with is very similar to this. Yeah. Okay. I cursed my luck again as I slid down the monkey's throat. Have my dreams of guzzling grog and plundering galleons been reduced to this? 3 small trials, and you're a pirate like us, they said. Fair enough. If only I could stomach the foul brood these scurvy sea dogs swallowed, the rest would be easy. How could I have known I'd meet a powerful and beautiful woman with a jealous suitor too stupid to realize he'd been dead for years? And how can I crawl through this great stone monkey to find a man who walks 3 inches above the ground and sets fire to his beard every morning? Excerpted from the Memoirs of Guybrush Threepwood, The Monkey Island Years. We will see a lot of this in the game. Eye-gouging 3D graphics, ear-piercing reggae music, no typing, point-and-click interface, relentless jabs and cryptic in-jokes. Only smart people understand. Average playing time, 30 hours. Now that's about right. The first time I played this game from end to end, it took me about 24 or 26 hours. And I expect that it will probably take us about that amount of time because I don't remember anything. ATM Machine says, yeah, the floppy versions have 12 green verbs and a text inventory, but the CD version has 9 purple verbs and an icon inventory. Yes, true. I remember the text version because that's the version I'm most conversant with. ATM Machine says 3D in the same sense as on cereal boxes, meaning you can walk behind some parts of the background. Also true. Yes. So, this is our box. This is the bottom of the box. And there's not much to see here, but I like that because they have to, here are all the trademarks, all in one big line, right? Amiga, Atari and ST, AdLib, Sound Blaster, they still don't mention here that the MT32 is on the way. This is the top of the box. Again, just not a lot to see here. Very colorful though. Side of the box. This is the right-hand side. And the left-hand side. There you go, 16 color. And we're at the end. So, okay, we've looked at the box. So at the top of our box, right, when we open it up, there are a couple of things that we're going to see. The first thing that we're going to see, for all intents and purposes, is this. This is our exchange card. So at this point in time, there's a shift happening where people either have 5¼ inch discs or they either have 3.5 inch discs. And the way that most games were packaged at this point in time was they often had both, but when the games were simply too big, in other words, when they had too many discs, they would put one version in or the other, but never both. And so you could, in some cases, with some publishers, trade in so you could get the one or the other that you didn't have and needed. So this is just a trade in for a disc that you might need. Thank you for purchasing a copy of The Secret of Monkey Island. This product is available in both 3.5 and also here it's very interesting that we still haven't made the jump to 1.4 and 1.2 megabyte discs. We're still talking about 720k, which is a lot in terms of this, and 360k, which is a lot less. If you'd like to receive The Secret of Monkey Island on either 5¼ inch disc, 3.5 inch diskettes, send us the original set of discs, so you have to give them all the discs that you had, and then they would return to you the other version that you wanted in this package, and we'll exchange them for you free of charge. Or you can receive one of the set of discs listed below by simply enclosing a check or money order for $10, $7 plus $3 shipping and handling. So we've got EGA, CGA, Tandy, and then EGA, CGA, and Tandy. You need to pick one, and then you fold the rest in, and off you go. I'm not going to read this. This doesn't exist anymore. It makes me sad to see things like this. For information on ordering a VGA upgrade, please see the other side of this coupon. So you turn this over. ATM Machine says, I think Zero often had both varieties in one box, but LucasArts generally did not. Yes, that's true. Very often, except as the games got steadily dumber and they included more discs, Zero would very often give you both versions of the disc. I remember opening up the King's Quest 5 box, and it was crazy. Lucasfilm Games VGA upgrade offer. Thank you for purchasing a copy of The Secret of Monkey Island. This product is available in a VGA-specific version and in a version supporting EGA, Tandy 16-color, and CGA 4-color. If your computer supports 256-color VGA, order The Secret of Monkey Island VGA upgrade by simply enclosing a check or money order for $15, $12 plus $3 shipping and handling, and then you check one because you want either 720K discs, which is wild because just below that they have the 1.2 5.25-inch discs. I don't know, and it's difficult to say now whether or not 1.4 megabyte drives were out and they just weren't making discs like that, or if we were just stuck in all the 720K 3.25-inch discs, 3.5-inch discs. So there you go. Oh, there we go. Available December 1990. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. That's probably just when the game came out. Sorry. And then, again, I'm not going to read any of this out. But again, it makes me so sad to see all these addresses that don't exist anymore because these people are gone. ATM Machine says, I think that was a major factor in why Zero totally redrew all the graphics in King's Quest 4 after release in a later version. Yes. King's Quest 4. So, King's Quest 4 is a famous case study in Zero's history because what King's Quest 4 kept on having happen was they kept on tinkering with the screens forever because they kept trying to minimize how much disk space they were using to get it shipped out to people. Blabberhoof says 1.4 megabyte discs were more expensive. Yes, also true. ATM Machine says they replaced all the separate nighttime backgrounds with night sky overlays for the daytime scenes, which let them downsize from 9 to 8, 5.25-inch disc. Yes, that's true. And the nighttime in the original version is so beautiful, and it's so sad that it's just in the effort to make the game smaller, they kept on messing with that. One of my favorite parts of King's Quest was actually walking around Tama by night. Okay, so I'm going to take a 10-minute break very quickly because I've been talking non-stop for about 50 minutes. When I come back, we're going to just further explore the box and the manuals. As I say, I don't necessarily know that we'll be playing the game today, but I do want to work through all this preparatory stuff so that tomorrow we can just start and the first thing we do is play the game. So I'll be 10 minutes. Okay, I am back. So the very next thing, so as we move through our box, the very next thing that we're going to sort of see is this. Now, as I mentioned, the version of the box that we were looking at does not mention Roland at all. But eventually, one of the things that gets crowbarred into this game is Roland Sound, MT32. The secret of Monkey Island does your PC have Roland Sound. If your IBM or compatible personal computer is equipped with a Roland MT32 sound module or LAPC1 sound card, 640K RAM, and a hard disk drive, you may want to order a special Monkey Island upgrade with spectacular Roland stereo sound. The upgrade is available in either 5.25 or 3.5-inch disc formats. Costs just $10, which is quite steep really for what amounts to just music. Although it is very good music, and can be ordered by mailing this form too. And then there you go. You get your disc format that you want, and so on and so forth. Right. And then, because all of these games had to have something go wrong with them, very often they have a reference card for, oh god, things have gone bad. And this is the reference manual, or reference card, I should say, for Secret of Monkey Island. Okay. Oh. Oh, wait a second. You are looking at the wrong thing. Just a minute. Let me get rid of this. And try again. Oh, no. Alright, sure, hang on. Let's try that. Yeah, that should work. Okay. Very good. I've got files in lots of different formats, and unfortunately I don't have them all set up properly. So, the Secret of Monkey Island, IBM 256 color VGA reference card. Your Secret of Monkey Island box should contain the following: the user's manual, one dial-up pirate wheel, which we'll look at in a second, and one upgrade certificate. Right, getting started. It's good that they include all this so that when collectors come by these, they're like, I should have all these things and don't. Getting started. Note the 256 color VGA version of the Secret of Monkey Island must be played from a hard disk. To install the Secret of Monkey Island on a hard disk, we have provided a utility that will automatically copy the program from your hard disk from the floppies included in the package. To run it, boot your computer, then insert disk 1 into drive A, type A drive, press enter. This utility will also work from drive B, and then you hit install, and then you just mostly follow the prompts. There you go. Yeah, you'd cd monkey.vga. That's very odd that they append that. But they obviously also are worried about people having the EGA version. So that would be probably cd/monkey without anything else. And then the VGA version just lives by itself in its own separate spot. Okay. Now, here's one of the cool things about this. You can tell it how you want to get it started. So if you want to Roland, you add a switch, and you just add R, and then A would give you Sound Blaster, or AdLib. G would give you Game Blaster. TS is handy. I, normal sounds, internal speaker, what I heard, and then MCGA, VGA, EGA, and MO for mouse control, J for the joystick, or K use keyboard control. Here's a example. It's Monkey MA would give you MCGA with AdLib. Cursor controls. For keyboard cursor control, use either the arrow keys or the keypad. Use enter or 5 keys on objects. Okay, we're going to be using a mouse, so we don't need to worry about this bit here. You can use the mouse for cursor control if you have installed a compatible mouse driver. The left mouse button corresponds to the enter key on your keyboard. The right mouse button corresponds to the tab key. If you have both a mouse and a joystick installed, you may select one. Okay. Keyboard controls. This is super cool. And one of the things I really like about LucasArts Adventures, and in fact we're talking about turn on and turn off, they still have it in the documentation here, even though it's not part of this game. It's probably just because this is the generic flyer that they would package into all of their games. They would just change the name here and send it off to be printed that way. Q&A scrolls inventory up and down, 1 and 6. Select the inventory objects there. We got the save and load. We got F5, which is the same as Sierra. I'm not sure if LucasArts were like, oh, people are comfortable using F5. We'll just use that for save and load. Okay. None of this is too exciting. F5, escape. F8. I'm gonna have to get used to that because I'm used to it being F9. Pause the spacebar. Sound controls, Control S. Message speed, you get plus or minus. Reposition instantly. This repositions you or the screen, I forget which, it's probably the screen. And then mouse on, joystick on. Exit game, Alt X or Control C. Control C is an old standby for I need to break this program, so you take Control C. And Control W wins the game, and V gives us the version number. Okay. We will try Control W the second we start playing. To load. Okay. Note, games with the 16-color version of The Secret of Monkey Island cannot be loaded by this version of the game, because as they move along, their internal way of storing things changes. Warning, loading previously saved game will cause you to lose the game that you are currently playing. And then we got IBM as a registered trademark and so on and so forth. ATM Machine says, you'll be able to tell by the screenshots if this is the manual for floppy or CD version. I think it's for floppy. Win the game, yes. We'll try it the second we start playing. Because I'm sure that in true LucasArts fashion, it will give us something dumb and funny. Okay, so it mentioned that we need the copy protection. The copy protection is this. It's the dial-up pirate wheel. I don't have a moving dial-up pirate wheel. Obviously, this is just an image. But I can show it to you at least. Yeah. Did I do it? I did it again. Hang on. Let's try it again with more feeling. There. Okay, so the way this works is they give you the picture of a pirate and you need to kind of line it up and line it up with a date, and then off you go, right? The version I'm playing will not have this because it's just a hassle. But that is how you would have to play the game, or get into the game at least to play it, right? There's some fun-looking piratey faces on this. you go. Okay, let's at last read the manual. That's why we're all here, right? Did I? Oh, I forgot to... Hang on a second. I'll have to go get the manual because I forgot the manual. Wait a second. I am idiot. Where's there? Okay. There we go. That's better. Oh, whoa, hang on. Don't close everything. My God. Okay. Let's try it again. Manual. And again, this is just a black and white version of the very awesome cover that we saw earlier. The Secret of Monkey Island. Created and designed by Ron Gilbert. Written and programmed by David Gossman, Tim Schafer. We know all these people. They're still, some of them are still around. Tim Schafer and Ron Gilbert. Background art by Steve Purcell. He's a very good artist that just lives in LucasArts for a long time. Mark Ferrari, again, super good artist. All of these guys will be with Lucasfilm more or less until it falls apart. And Mike Ebert. Animation by Steve Purcell, Mike Ebert, and Martin Cameron. Original music by Michael Land, Barney Jones, and Andy Newell of Earwax Productions, and Patrick Mundy. Scum Story System by Ron Gilbert, Eric Woolmunder, and Brad Taylor. Produced by George Gregory D. Hammond. Lucasfilm Games VP and General Manager Stephen D. Arnold. Managing Director Doug Glenn. Director of Operations David Fox. Marketing Managers Stacey Lamiero. Public Relations Betsy Iron. There's lead testers, so there's two of them. Well, there's two of them. It's wild that there are only two testers. There are probably more. These are the lead ones. There are probably more, but they don't mention them yet. Thanks to Noah Feilstein, who's very important in general for LucasArts. Orson Scott Card, who quote-unquote wrote lines for this game. But it's difficult to tell if he ever did, because the history of that is so muddy. James Wood, Carol Taylor, and Carol Knutson. Special thanks to George Lucas, who overwrote this entire division of Lucasfilm. The Secret of Monkey Island character names and all other elements and of the game fantasy are trademarked, and so on and so forth. Read this first, it's important. Although you may have played other Lucasfilm games, there are a few differences in The Secret of Monkey Island that you should be aware of. The interface you use to play the game now has an auto-highlight feature that highlights an appropriate verb when the cursor touches an interesting or useful object on the screen. This is a weird thing to be starting the game's manual on. Like, I wouldn't do this first, because you can't guarantee that the people that you are talking to are necessarily people who played the Lucasfilm games. I would have started with what most traditional manuals start with, which is, hey, this is the setting, but okay, here we are. They think everyone has played a Lucasfilm game before this one, and you need to know this right now immediately. That's maybe a failure of design here. ATM Machine says Orson Scott Card made a few suggestions for the sword fighting insults, but the regular designers then took whatever he suggested and adapted it to be to the gameplay. Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't, as far as I'm aware, he didn't write anything. He was just like, this sounds funny, include it, and then they did. For example, when the cursor touches a door that can be opened, the verb open is highlighted on the screen. By pressing the right or second controller button or equivalent keys, see your reference card for details, you can automatically perform the highlighted action, in this case opening a door. Don't worry though, this won't give away a solution to any puzzles. Also, you do not need to double click on objects or anything to use or activate them. A single click of the controller button should be used consistently throughout the game. This is kind of funny that they're pointing this out, because the language of clicking and double clicking is getting underway, but it's not super well understood yet. So it's funny that they're in quoting double click because they have to, but it's also funny that they mention this about the Secret of Monkey Island. I would have started with this first and then had this go second. In The Secret of Monkey Island, you play the role of Guybrush Threepwood, a young man who has just hit the shores of Melee Island, somewhere in the Caribbean. Our naive hero's travels have led him to Melee Island in a quest to fulfill his life's ambition, to become a fierce, swashbuckling, bloodthirsty pirate. Unbeknown to Guybrush, however, there have been some strange happenings in the area surrounding Melee Island and the more mysterious Monkey Island. As he walks into this maelstrom of mystery, Guybrush will soon be very aware that things are not what they appear to be, that even bloodthirsty pirates can be scared, and that there's more to being a pirate than swinging a sword and drinking grog. Here's where you come in. You direct the actions of Guybrush as he first explores Melee Island and then ventures on to Monkey Island. On Melee Island, Guybrush will have to prove himself worthy of becoming a pirate by completing the 3 trials. So remember when we talked about Ron Gilbert's manifesto and he said, give the player direction? He's immediately doing this. We're a page into this manual and he's already told us what we need to do. Through the course of completing these trials, you and Guybrush will learn much about pirate life and local folklore. But don't be surprised if you find that some of the people you meet seem rather anachronistic. If this is your first computer adventure game, be prepared for an entertaining challenge. Be patient, even if it takes a while to figure out some of the puzzles. And there's one infamous puzzle that I won't get, because I don't remember how it works. But it's Ron Gilbert is trying so hard to make this idea of the manifesto work, and then he walks himself into a rake with one of the puzzles. And it's just, what are you doing, guy? If this is your first computer adventure game, be prepared for an entertaining challenge. Be patient, even if it takes a while to figure out some of the puzzles. If you get stuck, you might need to solve another puzzle first, or find and use an object. But hang in there and use your imagination, and you will guide Guybrush to discover the secret of Monkey Island. Getting started. To start the game on your computer, please use the computer reference card included with the game. It contains all the instructions specific to your computer. Copy protection. This is the code wheel we just looked at. Once you've started the program, a screen will appear displaying a pirate's face, actually a combination of 2 faces. You'll be prompted to enter a date that was significant in that pirate's life at a given geographical location. Use your Dial-A-Pirate wheel to match up the top and bottom halves of the pirate face you see on the screen. Then locate the window on the wheel that matches the geographical location mentioned on the screen, using the keyboard to type the date you see in the window. Don't lose your Dial-A-Pirate wheel. They probably fended a lot of calls about this, but yes, without it you won't be able to play the game. If you lose the wheel, You may purchase another from Lucasfilm Games, call, and then there's a number. If we call this number now, we wouldn't get anything. This makes me sad. Playing the game. After the opening title sequence and introduction, Guybrush will meet the official lookout for Melee Island. When they've finished talking, Guybrush will walk down the dock at one end of the town of Melee. You may begin directing his actions as soon as he gets to the dock. The screen is divided into the following sections. The animation window is the largest part of the screen and is where the animated action takes place. It shows the camera's eye view of the room or location that the main character is in. Dialogue spoken by the characters, as well as game-related messages, also appear here. The sentence line is directly below the animation window, and here we have a picture of that. So this is 1 over here, which is the animation window, 2 is the sentence line, 3 is the verbs, and 4 is the inventory. It's directly below the animation window. Use this line to construct sentences that tell Guybrush what to do. A sentence consists of a verb, action word, and 1 or 2 nouns, objects. An example of a sentence you might construct on the sentence line is use shovel on dirt. Connecting words like on or with will automatically be inserted by the program. Verbs must be selected from the words in the columns below the sentence line. To select a verb, position the cursor over the word and press the left mouse or joystick button or the enter key. Verbs are highlighted in a bright color when an obvious use for them appears in the animation window. For example, when Guybrush is near a door that can be opened, positioning the pointer over the door will highlight the verb open. Pressing the right mouse or joystick button or the tab key to emulate the right button, we use the highlighted verb with the object, which in this case opens the door. But remember, although a verb is highlighted, that one verb may not be the only way to use an object. Try the other verbs as well. The inventory is the area to the right of the verbs. At the beginning of the game, the inventory is empty. When Guybrush picks up or is given an object to use during gameplay, the object is added to the inventory. The Mind Slug says, "Let me head to the toilet. That's where I read all the manuals." Yeah, it makes sense. It's a good place to just stop and pause and go, I will read this here, and then go and play the game. There is no limit to the number of objects Guybrush can carry. After all, he's young and strong. When there are more than 6 objects in the inventory, arrows appear to the left of the list. Use them to move the list up and down. Do they have an example of that? Not really. He's got exactly 6 objects here. Nouns. Objects can be selected in 2 ways. You may select a noun by placing the cursor over an object in the animation window. Many objects in the environment and all usable objects in the game have names. If an object has a name, it will appear on a sentence line when you position the cursor over it. If no name appears for an object on the screen, you can be sure that it has no significance other than as part of the background. So this is the way, inherently, that Lucasfilm are trying to solve the pixel hunt problem. They don't always succeed, but this is a good way of finding a middle ground between needing to pixel hunt and, not getting a clear answer that this is a pixel you should be hunting. You may select nouns by clicking on them in the inventory. To move Guybrush around, simply point the cursor where you want him to go and click. Notice that walk to is the default verb in the sentence line. This is because moving Guybrush around is what Guybrush will be doing most often. Cutscenes are short animated sequences, like scenes from a movie, which can provide clues and information about the characters. They're also used to show special animated sequences, as when Guybrush gets himself into a fight while exploring a mansion. When you are viewing a cutscene, you do not direct the action. Things to try in a town of Melee. Look at the poster in the first house at the dock. Select the verb look at with the cursor by pressing the left mouse or joystick button or the enter key. Notice that the words look at appear in the sentence line. Position the cursor over the poster and press the left mouse joystick button or the enter key. This completes the sentence look at poster on the sentence line. If Guybrush is not already standing in front of the poster, he will walk over it and read it to you. I'm not going to read this because these are hints for the beginning of the game. Talking to characters. There are plenty of colorful characters in the game with whom you can converse. Each person Guybrush meets will have something to say, whether friendly or unfriendly, helpful or unhelpful. Often, you can talk with someone at one point in the game, and then return to them later to get new information. To talk with a character, position the pointer on them, and then press the right mouse joystick button or the tab key to use the walk to verb automatically. This here is a very important conversation that we're going to have, and I'm not going to look at this picture so that we don't get spoiled. In a conversation, you will have to select what Guybrush says from among the possible phrases at the bottom of the screen. Just click on the phrase you want him to say. Of course, what Guybrush says will affect how other people respond, and as conversations continue, you could be presented with a new array of dialogue choices. Don't worry, we'll never punish you for selecting the wrong or funny dialogue response. After all, you're playing this game to have fun. Part of the manifesto is not to dead-end people, and so they generally make sure that they don't dead-end people in conversations either. It's very good. Function keys to save your progress in the game, enabling you to turn the computer on and off and start again later by using the same place. Use the save feature. Okay, I'm not going to read this because we've seen this already. Okay, escape bypasses a cutscene. To restart the game, you press F8. To pause, you press space. To adjust the speed of the message line, that's plus or minus. Turn the sound off and on. Press the keys indicated on your reference card. Note, sound for some computers can only be adjusted with the volume control on the monitor or television. True. Our game design philosophy. This is part of the manifesto. We believe that you buy games to be entertained, not to be whacked over the head every time you make a mistake. So we don't bring the game to a screeching halt when you poke your nose into a place you haven't visited before. We make it clear, however, when you are in a dangerous situation. Now, the good news is that there's only one death in Secret of Monkey Island. And I'll make sure to get us that death when we get there. This is LucasArts, not Sierra. Yes, correct. We think you'd prefer to solve the game's mysteries by exploring and discovering, not by dying 1,000 deaths. We also think you'd like to spend your time involved in the story, not typing in synonyms until you stumble upon the computer's word for a certain object. So, remember when I talked about the issue of how computer games arose, and specifically adventure games arose? And one of the things I mentioned was that we had a parser for a long time in these games. LucasArts are doing their very level best to get rid of the idea of the parser by replacing it with a point-and-click system that imitates a parser but gives you all the words that you need, right? And I think that this is a good middle ground. It's a great compromise. Unlike conventional computer adventures, you won't find yourself accidentally stepping off a path or dying because you picked up a sharp object. There are a few dangerous situations where Guybrush can die, but to anticipate them takes just a little common sense, not excessive paranoia. Save the game when you think you may be entering a dangerous area, but don't assume that every wrong step will result in death. Usually, you will get another chance. I think the game is lying a little because I only remember one death. But sure. A few helpful hints. Pick up everything you can. Odds are at some point all those strange things will serve some purpose. If you get stuck and can't figure out how to proceed, try looking through all the items you've found and thinking about how each one might be used. Think about the places you've gone, and the people you've met. Chances are there will be a connection that'll put you back on track. There is more than one way to solve many of the puzzles. If you want to speed up gameplay, order a hint book from Lucasfilm Games. I tried looking for the hint book for this game and didn't find one. But I'll do my level best between tonight and tomorrow to see if I can find someone who perhaps has the hint book so that we can look at it together. We won't read it, but I do want to look at them because I like looking at the hint books just to see how they were structured. ATM Machine says, I have a few copies of it in my house, so it definitely exists. That's good. If you want to access our automated hint line, this doesn't exist anymore. If you're under 18, get your parents' or guardians' permission, because these are not toll-free at this point. The cost is 75 cents per minute. They become toll-free eventually, but at this point they're not. And so you need your guardian or parents' permission because it's going to be an expensive call. If you need technical assistance, we're sorry, but no hints can be given on this line. Sure. And then we get legalese. Yeah. Okay. ATM Machine says early printings of the handbook made you use a red gel to see the answers. Later printings dispensed with that and just printed the answers in plain text. Yes, I remember that. I remember seeing, so different folks used different systems. Cirrus started off with that kind of system, but it wasn't red gel. You just colored the bit in and you got an answer. And then they moved to a system where you had like a little red window and you stuck it over the hint that you wanted, and you could read it through that. Lucasfilm obviously did iterations of that as well. Okay. So let me close that up. And that then basically concludes the day's stream. And tomorrow what we'll start doing is we'll start playing the game, because I want to keep these things fairly discreet. So we've gone through the box. Tomorrow the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the opening cutscene and start playing the game. Thank you to everyone who was here today. I appreciate it so much. And I appreciate all the commentary about this specific game. It's been... So the last time I played this game through from end to end was probably at its release. I've never played it through again because my recollection of it is that it is a fairly long and fairly involved game. And so it's the kind of game where I need to be in the mood to play it. And funny pirate comic games are not always up my alley. So ATM Machine says thanks for the stream. No problem. Alright. So in the last Ultima 4 stream, I said that when we moved games, I'm going to start trying to move us to different places because I haven't raided out in a super long time. But because I'm going to have people around from tomorrow, I'm not actually going to do that for the next 10 days because there's going to be people here. And I don't want to be too standoffish while there are people here. So we're not going to raid out again today and for the next 10 days. But as soon as we're done with Secret of Monkey Island, we'll start raiding again. Promise. And thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate it so much. I'm looking forward to playing this. I haven't played it in a long time. It's a fun game. Hopefully you will have fun watching me stumble around in it. Please have a wonderful evening. Please stay safe. And I shall see you all soon.